black thing down there is bung bung, yeah, as you can see.
I brought up the subject of bugging out, and I talked about societal collapse, and I'm being a bit jokey about it, a bit tongue-in-cheek, but the subject of like prepping and what do they call it, SHTF situation, I wouldn't say I'm into that. Like, I don't really prep. In my house there's no supplies or whatever. It's a subject I see come up quite often these days on the internet, and when I do stumble across it, I will watch a video about it, or I'll read a bit about it on a forum, and I do find it quite interesting. And one of the reasons that I would like to move to a rural area as opposed to a city is I do think, like, you never know, and push comes to shove, I'd rather be living on a farm with my own water supply than to be in an apartment block in a city. I've always thought to myself, whenever I'm in a city, there's just too many people here, and if anything happens, everyone's going to go completely crazy. I believe it is the very lack of preparedness that leads people to things like panic buying. And in this context, cities are large concentrations of people who are not prepared. Now, I don't normally talk about subjects like this because they're, they get political and they're polarizing, and some people sort of take it quite seriously, and other people mock it a little bit, and oh, you're crazy, that's never going to happen. And I don't know, I'm a bit on the fence about it myself, but it is just something I think about sometimes, so I thought I would talk about it a little bit. It does relate to what's going on here a little bit. A couple of questions people have asked me recently. Where are you from in England? I'm from like West London and North London, around that sort of area. I was living in St Albans before, and I still say this, I will be going back to England soon, and I'll be going back to live in St Albans, got to go back to work. And as well as growing these durian, long term here, I would like to make it a little bit self-sufficient. And someone asked me about solar panels. Am I going to do that? Well, yeah, maybe. I've looked into it. The cost is not that justifiable, but if there's a power cut, it's better to have a solar panel. Like, we have a well here, we can get our own water, but that relies on like government electricity. So again, push come to shove, I would rather have a few solar panels so we can pump our own water. That would be sensible. No water, no life, and I have heard that if you're in a difficult situation, then sorting out a water supply should be like your first priority, really. So this is like a really big, complicated subject. You can come at it from lots of different angles, and you can argue either side of it from lots of different angles as well. So from what I see on the internet, some people seem to think that societal collapse is like just around the corner. It's next year. We're all going to go back to like bartering with silver. And there's the other extreme of people that just have no interest in this whatsoever, and that's 1 in a million. But I don't think you can approach a subject like this in terms of chances. I think it's unpredictable, and I also think, like, let's say it did happen and the worst happened and there was a war, or oil runs out, or whatever it is, a natural disaster. I think it's also really unpredictable what would actually happen, like what people would do and what the situation would be like. I think it's impossible to predict. Beyond, well, you're going to need some water and some food. But one thing I read in this discussion when it comes up is people say, it's not about your food supply or your water supply. It's really about your community and where you're living. Because in a difficult situation, you're going to need to be able to rely on the people around you. And I think that is true. There's a few films that cover this subject, Mad Max and that Kevin Costner's Waterworld film. I really like those films. Well, as well as being great films, I also think that they portray it quite accurately in terms of you get like the individualists who are sort of trying to go on their own, but for the most part people still band together in communities, and I think that's what humans are mostly like. They're sort of cooperative, and for the most part I think people are not evil, and they will work together. And for some real life examples, you could look at extreme survival situations, shipwrecks, or people who got trapped in the Arctic. And if you read their story, assuming that their story is the truth, then you'll see that people don't all start killing each other and going nuts, that they still cooperate and ration food and try to go through it in a rational manner. So that's what I think is the more likely of the doomsday scenarios, is that people won't go, you know, straight to cannibalism, as I was joking about. They will still maintain some sort of discipline. So at the moment I've got to trust the government electric supply to keep us in water, and I'm like 99% of people, where I'm trusting the supermarkets to keep me fed, and the gas stations to be stocked up with petrol and diesel when I show up. And history is full of examples of people who didn't reach old age because they placed their trust in their governments and their society, and at that time it went wrong. And you don't have to look back that far to find examples of SHTF situations all around the world. What do you guys think about this subject that I'm talking about? Are any of you stockpiling anything, or are any of you like me, where you live in a city but you're really not comfortable with it and you'd rather get out and be a little bit more on your own somewhere? I think this is a lot more prevalent than we realise, but that the vast majority of people are just unable to do anything about it. They have a family and a job, or do any of you think it's totally stupid cooking something? Hopefully that's for me.